Did you ever stop something you loved and then the longer you left it, the harder it felt to come back? That's been me with this podcast. I genuinely thought I could do 1 hour episodes, edit them, post every week, and just fit it in around the kids. And then real life was like, cute plan. I'm going to tell you what actually happened, why I went quiet, and what I'm doing differently now. And there's one change that would have saved season one, and I'll get to that. So, in my head, starting the podcast looked pretty simple. I pictured these long, cozy chats where we'd get into the real stuff: motherhood, identity, marriage, feeling, that feeling touched out, all of it. And I thought, okay, I'll record, I'll edit, I'll schedule, and I'll just do it at night. Like the night is this magical empty pocket of time that no one else is using. And I also had this story in my head that if I cared enough, I'd make it work. Like passion equals capacity. If I wanted it badly enough, I would just push through and be consistent. But here's what actually happens when you're a mum and you try to add a weekly 1 hour podcast on top of everything else. First, there's the obvious stuff: school runs, packing lunches, the mum, I can't find my shoes stress at 8:12 a.m. The sick days that came out of nowhere, the assemblies, the birthday parties, the permission slips you swear you signed, but apparently you didn't. The weeks where you're like, okay, this week will be calm. And then by Tuesday, someone's got a temperature and the washing machine is making a noise. It definitely shouldn't. And then there's the stuff you don't put on your to-do list, but it still takes up space in your brain. Remembering who needs what and when, tracking appointments, keeping the household moving, managing everyone's emotions, your own emotions, thinking about dinner at 10 a.m. because if you don't, you'll be staring into the fridge at 5 p.m. like it's personally betrayed you. So I'd get to nighttime and be like, right, podcast time. And I'd sit down with my laptop and I'd open my editing software and my brain would just slow down. Not because I didn't want to do it, but because I was already done for the day. And this is the part I just didn't understand in the beginning. Recording is the best bit. Recording is fun and it feels like, oh my gosh, I'm doing the thing. You can talk, you can get it out, you can feel connected. And the hard part was just everything around it: the mental load, the follow through, and trying to squeeze it into the same week when I'm already maxed out. So I'd hit the end of the day and I'd think, oh, I can't do this tonight. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't have anything left. And then you miss 1 week and you tell yourself you'll catch up. Then you miss another. And suddenly it's not this passion, it's this thing sitting in the corner making you feel guilty. Because when you miss 1 week, you tell yourself you'll catch up. And then you miss the next week and now it feels awkward. And then you miss another week and now you feel like you can't show your face because people noticed. Or maybe they didn't, but your brain tells you they did. And I want to say the quiet part out loud: it wasn't a lack of passion. I didn't stop because I didn't care. I stopped because I didn't have the capacity to keep doing it the way I was doing it. And that difference matters, because if you tell yourself, I quit because I'm flaky, you'll carry that shame into everything. But if you can say, actually, I built it in a way that didn't fit in my real life, then it's not a character flaw, it's a design problem. And once you see it as a design problem, you can change it. But here's where it gets interesting. It wasn't just busy. Life didn't just get full. It got messy. So when I say it got messy, I don't mean like, oh, we had a busy week messy. I mean the kind of messy where you're already behind before the day even starts and you can feel it in your body. Burnout for me didn't look like lying in bed all day. It looked like brain fog, like opening my laptop, not being able to remember what I was doing, and look like dread over the smallest things. Like even writing a caption felt like trying to push a couch uphill. It looked like snapping faster than I wanted to and then feeling horrible about it. It looked like I'd finally get a quiet moment and instead of feeling relieved, I'd just feel flat. Like my battery wasn't just low, it was dead. And at the same time, real life at home was doing that thing where it doesn't ask permission. We had house stuff going on that just ate time, money, and energy. And I don't want to overshare every detail because it's not that kind of episode, but it was just the chaos where you can't just focus on a creative project. You can't just focus. You're chasing tradies, cleaning up mess you didn't make, trying to keep your kids out of the way, and your brain is just running a constant background tab of how long is this going to take to fix? Plus the normal family stuff, the emotional stuff, the invisible stuff, the stuff no one claps for, but it still has to get done. So I started doing this thing where I'd look at the podcast and go, okay, next week. And I meant it. I genuinely meant it. Next week I'll record. Next week I'll edit. Next week I'll come back with a really good episode and it'll all be fine. But then next week would come and I'd still be exhausted, or something else would happen, or I'd finally get an hour and I'd choose sleep because I needed sleep more. And then the weeks turned into months. And the longer it went, the heavier it felt. Because now it wasn't just I'm taking a break. Now it was people notice I disappeared. And this is the part that's hard to admit. I'd see messages. I'd see people asking if I was okay, or asking when the next episode was coming, or just being really kind, and I would just freeze. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say without feeling like I was making excuses. And you know what makes it worse? When you're the one who talks about real motherhood, and then you can't even keep up with the thing you created to talk about real motherhood. The irony is not lost on me. Also, just gently, I've had seasons of motherhood that have been genuinely heavy. If that's part of your story too, you're not alone, and we'll still make space for those deeper conversations in season 2. But the big mindset shift for me in this break was this. Stopping didn't mean I failed. It meant the way I was doing it wasn't sustainable. And that's such a different story to live inside. Because when you think you failed, you hide. You beat yourself up. You tell yourself you're not the kind of person who follows through. But when you see it as a signal, you can get curious. You can go, okay, what needs to change so I can actually keep this going without wrecking myself? And that's what this hiatus really became. Not a dramatic exit, not a big statement, just this quiet moment where I finally admitted I can't do it like this anymore. So if stopping wasn't the end, what does coming back even look like? So here's what changed. It wasn't like I woke up one morning and suddenly had my life together. It was more like I got a tiny bit of breathing room again. My youngest started full-time school, and for the first time in ages, there was this little window in the day where I wasn't immediately needed by someone. And I remember thinking, oh, like this is what space feels like. Not heaps of space, but enough to hear my own thoughts. And because I had that space, I started missing the podcast in a different way. Not in a guilty way, in a, I really want to come back to this. I'd be driving around and thinking of topics. I'd be talking to other mums and someone would say something. And I'd be like, that's an episode. And I'd get a DM. And instead of feeling sick with shame, I'd feel this little spark of, I'm not done. I just needed to stop bleeding out. But I also knew I couldn't come back and do the exact same thing, because if I tried to restart season one would happen again. And I don't want that for me or for you. So the biggest difference is this new rule. Episodes are going to be shorter, tighter, and more to the point. Not because I have less to say. Honestly, I could talk for Australia, but because I want this podcast to be doable in real life, for you to listen to and for me to actually make without it taking over the whole week. So think less 1 hour therapy session and more, here's the point, here's the shift, try this and breathe. Season 2 is still real mummy. It's still honest motherhood. It's still the stuff we all think but don't always say out loud. The guilt, the rage, the why do I miss my old life and love my kids at the same time? The friendships that change, the identity stuff, the marriage stuff, the pressure to be grateful while you're drowning. But it's going to be delivered in a way that respects the fact that we're all tired and we don't always have time for heaps of fluff. And remember that open loop I mentioned earlier, the one that would have saved season 1? I'm designing for real life, not fantasy life. Like actually building the thing around my capacity instead of my ambition. Putting boundaries on it, making it fit inside motherhood, not trying to force motherhood around it. So practically, that means I'm not doing perfection anymore. I'm not over editing every breath out and every I'm not waiting until I feel ready, because I never feel ready. And I'm definitely not promising weekly 60-minute marathons like I'm a single uni student with a quiet house and hobbies. What I am doing is simple: a clear format, consistent drop day, shorter topics, more direct, and more permission to be human. Some weeks it'll be me solo like this. Some weeks I'll bring guests back in, but with more structure so we don't wander for an hour and then I'm up at midnight trying to wrestle the audio into shape. And I want you in this with me because I don't want to guess what you need. So if you've got something you're in the thick of right now, tell me, message me, comment, even just write one line like I'm losing it at bedtime, or I feel resentful, or I don't know who I am anymore. And I'll build episodes around what you're actually living. Because the whole point of this show is that we stop pretending, we stop performing, we stop acting like everyone else is coping better than us. And I'm coming back as me, not the polished version, not the version who has a color-coded calendar and a clean bench, the real one. The one who disappears sometimes, the one who gets overwhelmed, the one who still wants to create something great, even if it's a bit messy. So if you've ever felt like you don't have it together and you're embarrassed about what you've dropped or how long it's been, this next part is for you. Because here's the bigger point I keep coming back to, and I want this podcast to be a place that reminds you of it over and over. Every mum drops the ball, every single one. And the fact that you're dropping them doesn't mean you're lazy or ungrateful or bad at life. It usually means you're carrying too many at once. And I know that sounds obvious, but when you're in it, it feels personal. Like everyone else has this secret system and you're the only one drowning in these half-finished things. So if you're listening and you've got a season where you don't have it together, you're not alone. If you're behind in the laundry, if you forgot the school photo money, if you've left messages unread for days because you just can't deal with one more thing, that's not a moral failure. That's a nervous system that's maxed out. And I want to talk to the embarrassed version of you for that second. The version that's thinking, I can't go back now. It's been too long. Whether that's a job, a friendship, the gym, the group chat, whatever. Coming back after a gap feels awkward because you feel like you owe people an explanation, but you're allowed to just come back. Start smaller than you think you should. Pick one thing that matters and let the rest be good enough. Ask for help. Do it messy. Do it in a way that actually fits your week. Because everyone has a corner that's chaos and no one's nailing every area at once. And that's why this show it's not perfect mum anything. It's real mummy. It's the honest version. And yes, season 2 is going to go into the deeper stuff too, but in a way that's short and straight to it. Unlearning the shoulds, mum guilt, rage, friendships, identity, the stuff we whisper about. Remember this, you can stop, regroup, and start again in a small way and it still counts. If you want to come with me for season 2, hit follow or subscribe and send this episode to one mum who's been a bit quiet lately. And message me, what do you want me to cover first? What are you in the thick of?